literal equations and showing proficiency by scoring at least an 80% on the exit ticket. Hopefully you have the note sheet in front of you. If you don't, take it out. Take out a fresh sheet of paper and we'll get you a new copy tomorrow. Now, the difference between a literal equation and a normal equation, or as we call it, a linear equation. A literal equation is an equation that contains more than one variable, and we're going to specifically solve for one variable. When we solve for it, we want to rearrange that equation to isolate the variable we want, and we're still using those inverse operations to make sure that we're solving it correctly. Now, if we look at a couple examples. The first one, we want to solve for x. We're still using reverse order of operations, so we have to start if there's any adding or subtracting. In this case, there's not. So if I draw my line down there, there's no adding and subtracting. A is being multiplied by x, so if I'm solving for x, I want to divide by a on both sides. Doing that, a divided by a gives me 1, and I'm left with x equals c over a. And that's my answer. And I know it looks weird because it's only variables, but if I were to give you numbers to put in, we could evaluate the equation, but we're just solving for that one variable. If we look at number 2, we have g plus hx equals f. We need to solve for g. So again, we're solving for this term. Now, we need to start with any adding and subtracting. Well, hx is being added to it. The opposite of adding is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract hx on both sides. Well, those cancel out down to 0, and I'm left with g equals f minus hx. In this case, g is now by itself, so we're done solving our equation. Now, if we look at number 3, we do have some more numbers in it, but we're still going to solve it the same way. If we're solving for y, we're solving for this, so we need to start with the term that doesn't have y in it. We need to see if there's anything being adding or subtracted to it. Well, 3x is, and it's positive, so the opposite is going to be subtracting 3x. Those cancel out. I bring down my 2y. Now, on the right-hand side, I have 8 and I have 3x. They both don't have the same variable, so we cannot combine them. So I'm going to put negative 3x plus 8. Combining like terms, the rules still apply. You have to have the same variable and the same exponent. Well, now I need y by itself. There's no adding and subtracting, so now we need to look at multiplication and division. In this case, 2 is being multiplied by y, and the opposite is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Now, in this case, we can have two separate answers. We can have one that looks exactly like that, or instead of making a big fraction bar, we can simplify it and break it into both terms. And I'm going to put it with the 3 and with the 8. Well, if I do that, negative 3 divided by 2 stays the same, but 8 divided by 2 can simplify down to 4. So both of those answers are considered correct answers. The thing you need to be careful about is when you're dividing by that 2, if you're going to split it apart into separate fractions, make sure every number is divided by 2 in your answer. You can't just put it under the first number. You can't just put it under the second number. It needs to be under both sets of the numbers. Now, if we look at example 4, we're solving for y. Well, in this case, we need to start with a term that doesn't have the y, and that top part is like a grouping symbol. So we're going to treat it like it's being grouped together. So we can't start with that because we always start with adding and subtracting. Grouping symbols are the last part. So we need to get rid of the 2 on the bottom. Well, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, since this is dividing the fraction by 2. So 2m equals x plus y. Well, now we're left with just the grouping symbols, so we can simplify that down. If I'm solving for y, I need to bring x to the other side. The opposite of positive x is subtracting x. Those cancel, and we're left with y equals. 2m and x don't have the same variable or the same exponent, so we're just going to keep it as 2m minus x. Literal equations are solved the exact same way that regular equations are solved. The only difference is now we have a couple more variables. You just need to slow down, take your time, and do the opposite of order of operations to get your answer. Please bring your notes and any questions you have to class tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then.